Welcome to the May 9th, 2023 Bloomfield Hills City Commission meeting. Let's all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First, we have the consent agenda. It contains the minutes for the regular city commission meeting held on April 11th, and also there's a memo from our finance director and treasurer, Sandra Barlis, on the Trowbridge chip seal special assessment. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I just have a question on the Trowbridge situation. Are those residents, are they ones that voted for it, or we just don't know, or it's none of our business, but we just put it on their tax bill?
Right, I don't know how they feel about it. I just know that they didn't make an installment or pay it off in full. So the first resident on the list, though, is someone that contacted me last week, and he is a new owner. I think he purchased it in March, so he wasn't even aware of the assessment, but now he is, and he knows that the first installment will be on his tax bill. So, but the other three I have not had contact with, and I did send out reminder notices in April, and I sent out 5 and 1 paid, and then the other 4 did not respond.
And so this ends up going on their tax lien. Okay.
Okay, next item is recognition of citizens in the audience.
So you want us to approve the
Oh, I'm
consent
sorry,
agenda?
yes.
It's okay.
Yes. A motion, please, on the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, it's carried. Recognition of citizens in the audience. I don't see anyone here that wants to speak. Okay, I think we're good there. The next item is we will hear first a presentation from our finance director and treasurer, Sandra Barlis, on the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. Before we open the public hearing, we do have a presentation. It's really just to give a little bit of context to the budget. Of course, we've already met a couple of times and discussed it in detail. So this evening, I'm just going to do a quick overview, but certainly stop if you have questions or have comments and want to discuss it. This is just a slide that shows our budget process. I think it's important for taxpayers to understand. I'm not going to go through every detail on this page, but just to kind of summarize it, the budget process really is a collaborative effort. So there's many discussions, conversations, planning with just the city staff or administrative staff, and then with all the department heads, and then certainly with the commission. So we had 2 meetings, as you know, this year to discuss this upcoming budget, and they were quite thorough. So now, of course, we're here for the public hearing and then the approval of the budget. And I just want to say that tonight's budget that was presented in your packet is exactly the same for fiscal 24 as our last meeting. There hasn't been any changes at all. So just so you know that. So this is our 7 funds that we budget for. 6 of the funds are part of the governmental funds, which in total our expenditures we're proposing roughly $14.5 million. And then the water and sewer just under $6 million. So I'll touch on each one of these funds. So the revenue source, you can see by percentage that every year our property taxes is our largest revenue source. It's usually around 87%, but this year it was a little bit altered just simply due to receiving a federal grant. So that $420,000 on the third layer down is the ARPA funds, or the American Rescue Plan Act So we received those funds and we will be using them as approved by City Commission towards our fire truck. So I believe the fire truck will be here in the beginning of July, so that's exciting. But you can see all the other expenditures, or excuse me, revenues by source and by percentage. So the taxable value this year went up roughly 6% over last year. The millage rates that we're proposing has not changed over last year either, or I should say this current year. So the operating millage will be 10.6, with the library being 0.36. So that total revenue that we're expecting should be $11,416,000. So then expenditures, we're expecting, or we're proposing just over $13 million, with the largest function is the Public Safety Department, which is no surprise since they're the biggest department at 51%, so roughly $6.6 million. The second largest is the general government. That consists of all the other departments besides the public safety and DPW. So that's, city manager, treasurer, city clerk, as well as things like legal fees, assessing, engineering. That's all lumped into that general government for roughly $2.5 million, and then the public service at $1 million. The transfers out, that consists of our bonds, and we'll talk about that when we get to that fund, as well as our capital purchases that we transfer to the capital fund. But we also have that other capital outlay of the $720,000 that consists of the ARPA funds that we'll be spending for the fire truck, as well as $300,000 for the Chesterfield project, the culvert. If indeed it comes back at $500,000 to line those culverts, it's proposed to spend $300,000 out of the general fund and $200,000 from local roads. And I'll get to that in a minute. And then just another way of viewing the expenditures, this is by activity. You can see the personnel expenses with wages and benefits is about 42%. That's the largest expense, and then the transfers out I just mentioned, and then the non-personnel or operating expenses is 25%, and then the retirees, which the OPEB part is discretionary, the $500,000 of that is discretionary, but that's about 17% of our expenditures. And then this slide here, I like to always compare our current year with the coming year, just to kind of see what pops out as why there was such a change, right? So these are the main reasons why our revenue over this current year is being proposed at 7.5% higher, and why our expenditures are expected to be about 8% higher. And I've already talked about the grant for the fire truck, so that's both on the revenue and the expenditure side. Tax revenue will be higher because of our taxable value increasing, but also our general fund, we're proposing to have a higher amount of our operating mills stay within the general fund versus transferring, or I should say dedicating a portion to the road construction projects. So we'll talk about that in a second as well. Our building permit revenue, it's been quite high this year. There's been a lot of activity and a lot of revenue. So I'm anticipating it's not going to be quite as high. So that's why we have that negative up there, $325,000. And then just $10,000 for state revenue sharing. That's based on what information we received from the state of Michigan. And then our expenditures, the capital fund transfer from the general fund, it's about $200,000 higher for next year than it is for the current year. And then our debt fund is about almost $19,000. That's not due to any additional debt. It's just our schedule for our bonds. It's a little bit higher for the next year. And then, of course, our contract with Baldwin Library increased 3%, or will increase 3%, so that's about $10,000 higher. And the ambulance fees, we haven't experienced any expenditures for that, and possibly we will next year. So that is part of that increase. And then, of course, one of the larger is the Chesterfield project. So I'd just like to point that out as to why there's such a change from one year to the next. And next year, I'm sure we're anticipating it to dip down simply because we won't have that grant money. That makes a difference. And then this is our fund balance. So we're showing the actual for 2022, what we're expecting for this current year, what is budgeted, and then the proposed, and then a forecast for 5 years. So looking at this, it does look like, it's going way up, and we're going to anticipate in 2028 at almost 80% of unassigned fund balance. This is just a snapshot of what we know today. So I don't, there's a little asterisk next to that, I'm not really expecting us to be that high because things come up. Expenditures, one-time expenditures happen. But this does consist of everything that we know today, which includes, stuff like the raises that are in, the union contracts. This has the OPEB that we want to continue with the $500,000, and perhaps Commission will want to do more, so that would change this certainly. Also, the employer contributions for pension, all of that's in here on capital as well that we've planned as of now. But again, this is just a snapshot. I think it's important for me to say that so Commission understands that I'm not anticipating that we'll be at 11 million in 5 years, but we certainly could be if nothing, else came along. But I think what it really shows is that we're very healthy. Our finances are very healthy. Oh, and one other thing, and I've said this every year since I've been here, the bond will be paid off for the road 2010. So that's what really helps increase that, because it's $500,000 a year. So we have 2 more payments on that.
But it is, if I may, but it's true that the roads program that started, 12 plus years ago, we'd be starting all over again on some level, so.
That could be true, yes.
Right, so.
And that's an excellent point.
So
Yep.
that's one thing that will certainly have the potential to cut into the future, because we'll have to start doing some of these roads again.
And, currently we have the bond that was taken out in 2010. So, fund balance would be available, I would assume, to make some of this projects versus taking out another bond is a possibility. So, let's see. So this is our major and local road funds. The revenue from the road funds is what's called, or is referred to as Act 51 funds, which is just gas tax, registration on vehicles and whatnot. We receive that from the state of Michigan. And then the expenditures and mostly are on maintenance of our roads. So that includes that includes winter with plowing and all of that. But also the local roads does have the $200,000 in the expenditure line for that Chesterfield project. So combined, the fund balance is still pretty healthy at $317,000 that we're expecting at the end of the year. And then the debt fund, you can see in 2024, we're expected to pay about $1.655 million. The following year, the same roughly. And then after that, you can see the 2010 bond will be paid off. So it'll just consist of the pension bond. This is our capital improvement. We've already discussed all of these items in our budget meetings. I'm not going to go into each item unless, of course, there's questions, but we're expecting to spend about $351 $352,000 in capital. But there will also be an additional transfer from the general fund of around $163,000, and that's to pay for the financing of the fire truck, the sweeper truck, and then we also have a backhoe that we've been financing. So, and then the proposed road construction fund, the roads are listed there that the project would consist of. On the Lone Pine Hill, Edgemere, Cranbrook Court, Linda Lane, and Linda Court. That cost is estimated at $516,000. Since the project that we did this current fiscal year came in a little bit less than anticipated, we have some fund balance left over of $135,000. So the operating millage that we would dedicate to this project is less than it has been in the past at 0.366. So that would pay for this one road project. And then the water and sewer, there's not a lot to discuss on that. We have a lot of current projects. Our sewer lines have been analyzed, and we're in the middle of discussions with HRC and WRC to find out what kind of repairs are needed and the expenditures of that. And we'll have more discussions about that, I believe, next month when we do the rate setting. But other than that, there's nothing coming up. We have that road, or excuse me, that water bond payment where we only have a couple more years on that as well. But that comes out of the water and sewer budget. So that's it really. We've already discussed things in detail, but if there's any questions, have to answer.
We did discuss, I guess, but it would come out of this year's budget, amendment maybe to add more to our unfunded healthcare liabilities.
Yes, I'll bring that next month.
Okay.
As part of the budget amendment.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:47 p.m. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:47 p.m. And are we ready for a motion?
Move to approve the 2024 budget.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote.
Also to approve the resolution.
The resolution that's included in the packet, yes.
Okay. And to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Commissioner Baxter's, please say aye or nay.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner McClure.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. So we have adopted the budget resolution that's included in the packet. Okay. Next item are city manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few. I wanted to, it reminded me about the PRB valve up there. So that's been completed, but they're doing testing right now. And so we're just making sure that the system's working well. But that's, you may recall at Square Lake in Woodward, there was a big project that went underway. We couldn't do it in the summer months because of water usage. So that's been completed, and it's under testing right now and should be in full operation. So that issue, was one of the big issues that we had to pay for with water and sewer, is done. I wanted to ask the commission, I recently received a request from a resident who lives on Pembroke and lives near the Vaughan and Pembroke intersection. And we had, the commission may recall, we did some work on Country Club to reduce the gravel runoff onto Vaughan Road. And Pembroke's another road that has that issue. As a matter of fact, after the Trowbridge improvement, that'll be the last road really that is I identified as one of the 5 issues with gravel roads in the city. And so I think there's 4 or 5 homes, it might be 4 homes that reside from Vaughan Road up to where Pembroke where Country Club crosses Pembroke. It's like a, an X. So I spoke with this resident, and, you know, she requested maybe I could reach out to the residents to see if they'd want to pave this. But I didn't want to send a letter out until I talked with the commission, because, you know, there may be some questions, would the city be involved in any way, and that sort of thing, so, I don't know.
Is she
if,
looking at paving the entire Pembroke or just the section?
just the section probably up to Country Club.
Mike McCready, who used to be on this, used to be mayor or whatever, he had I think twice, had gone to all the neighbors all along the entire Pembroke, asking if they would please pave the road because it is so muddy, and he, you know, his efforts were futile. But is it okay to just, can they approve just that one section and just have that one section of homes pay for that one section?
So to make it work, you'd have to go up the hill, a little further than you would of Country Club. You have to go up the hill a little further. So it would you probably have to go almost to Country Club. So the folks, I think there's like 4 homes that reside in that area. And I mean, you know, the city has a policy that the residents pay for the initial paving of, and this is paving, this wouldn't be chip seal, but of the initial paving for a gravel road. But, you know, before I send a letter out or ask, you know, I don't know what interest there is. That would resolve the erosion issue that we have. But I don't want to do that until.
So it's really just 4 houses or 5 houses.
Right.
That we'd be talking about. I mean, some of those houses may have turned over in the past 10,
I would hope,
5,
yes.
8 years since
Yes.
they looked at it before.
Wasn't it just quite a lake at the bottom of where it hit Vaughn? I remember I couldn't even drive past there when there was that huge rain. And is there anything like on your street where the city contributed for part of the?
They only did part of my street because
Just the
the
part where
residents
it-
on the other half didn't want to pay, so it was only the residents by the hill that paid. So,
Country Club is a little bit different because we had to do some infrastructure work there. So the city paid for the infrastructure work, but I think we paid for that out of the water and sewer fund. I'm not sure right at this point if there's any infrastructure work that the city could contribute to, but typically we ask the residents to pay for the paving. Last year during all our paved road projects, East Valley paved the road, and I approached the commission. I had a couple residents. I knew though that they were very interested in paving it, and they paid for all the paving, but there was no infrastructure, and there was no really reason for curbs. Now I'd have to have the engineers review if there's any need for curbs and that sort of thing, but it could be much more expensive than the East Valley. So,
But did the resident who called you say that her family wanted to contribute?
she's one of those 4 that lives on that street.
And
Yeah.
they want to pay for it.
Yes.
And she's not willing to go house to house. She wants you to
Yes.
ask the neighbors.
Yeah, she wanted me to do it, and I said I'd be happy to do that, but I'd have to talk to the commission first because.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to the 4 or 5
Right,
homes.
I agree.
But, you know, it's probably, those lots are pretty big there. I don't know. Jamie, what's your initial reaction on, I mean, they're probably talking about a $50,000 plus assessment per house.
There's 5 total, if you count the corner lots, and it is longer than the section of Country Club. In the Country Club section, there's like 6 houses in the same,
Right.
and the prices have not gotten any cheaper. To Dave's point, we would look at the water main, because the water main, I don't know if they're the same, but if they're old 6-inch mains, then the city, Country Club, we paid to fix the water main and bring it up. They paid for kind of the rest of it. You're gonna need some storm sewer on Pembroke because you gotta get the water off. Otherwise, you're just making it go faster to the intersection, and at the intersection, because that's the one that goes right into the gate, right, at the school. No.
It goes right into the school, I think.
Yeah, right, almost a circular driveway. So we'd have to figure out some of that. It will be expensive.
Yeah,
Whatever country club was, it'll be more expensive.
So residents are probably looking at a
50.
50 plus to $75,000 assessment.
Dave, do you remember what country club was? What, 30? That seems to ring a
It
bell.
was 30. It was 30 apiece.
Oh, really? Okay.
For Country Club, but I think this is different
This
because
is,
Country Club was they were paying for the asphalt only, and we paid for some of the infrastructure through water and sewer funds. So, well, how about this? How about I engage Mr. Burton there to find out what it costs for this section of road, to make it right, to make the water, get the water off the road and not cause a problem for Vaughn.
I mean, I don't know how you pave partway up a hill. You either have to do the whole hill.
So,
Stop at the top.
Yeah, you'd have to,
It's-
because that's
You'd
what.
stop where the other paved road, or the other road crosses?
The road crosses, yeah.
so
Would Cranbrook ever contribute or be involved?
No, it's really nothing to do with them because it's a city street, it's not
Right.
touching their property, so, no, I don't think they would.
It floods their property. Well, maybe not, but it's
Yeah,
right
but
there.
they're a nonprofit, so they don't pay
Right.
taxes. They haven't paid for any of the other ones. They pay water and sewer fees, but they don't pay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
We had a few solutions, but the solutions, matter of fact, I just, a couple of them I just thought, we're just kicking the can down the road on this. But I never had anybody approach me that lived there and said they're interested. So that, once that happens, then I take an extra step. So, okay, I'll look into it and then bring it back to you if I find out there's maybe ways for the city to contribute and communicate that with the residents and see what you think.
Can I ask so we contributed as a city to Trowbridge, if we contribute to every, is there a precedent that is set? Is that a problem for the city council?
We've always contributed some dollar amount.
Great, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah,
as we should, okay. I just wondered if,
but sometimes it's nice to contribute water and sewer funds because, we're actually rebuilding infrastructure and to the benefit of the city, so it's kind of a
Sure.
win-win if we can do that.
you bet.
Can the water lines go from 6-inch to then what we would be putting in the new area? That doesn't matter?
yeah, so I mean, for 80% of your water system, no, because we've replaced so much. All your water system was built after like 1974 and like 1978, and then whatever new subdivisions came after that, they put in the water. A lot of it's old 6-inch pipe and 8-inch. So why were we going to put in a 15-year, 20-year road on top of it where we just mill and overlay? So and we got an excavator there for storm drainage, we might as well replace it. But in doing so, that takes the mobilization costs off the homeowners. There's shared items, the gravel, the backfill, etc. And so that's your contribution in lieu of 10%, 20%
Yeah.
that we've talked about with just pure paving projects. So we've only tried in 25 years I've been doing city work. We've tried Country Club in Pembroke 2 or 3 times, but it's always been all or nothing, and we just can't get to that 60%. And so I think this approach of these areas, Pembroke is a little different because for the most part, Pembroke kind of falls all the way from Long Lake all the way down to Vaughan, where Country Club goes up and down and up back up. So it's kind of, we got picked to the top of the hill. So I think that's probably the intersection would be a good break point. So
I think a lot of the residents are worried about becoming a cut through.
If you keep
From Long
it dirt off of Long Lake, then they don't know that half of it's paved. I mean, that's what happened
Exactly.
on my street. It's still dirt from Woodward, but then the hill got paved, and that has changed everything. I mean, you used to have ruts and gravel go over everybody's lawn, and
Wow.
buses couldn't get up because the ruts were like,
Wow.
it had gotten ridiculous. So that's made a huge difference, but they had to do the hill, and then a couple people just beyond the hill paid. So, yeah.
So the other thing I had, you have something else or no? The other thing I had was fire hydrants. So we had a resident that was that painted his own fire hydrant because he said all of our fire hydrants had been painted. So I suppose
He didn't call the city first to say, please
No,
paint the
he
fire.
called us afterwards to tell us we had to
Yeah.
do the rest of them.
Jeez.
So I think we have about 500 fire hydrants in the city, 500 and some odd fire hydrants from what I recollect, and they haven't been painted over 20 years. And so I don't know what the commission feels like, but we've looked at this a few times in public safety, and we can't have our people out there painting them. We just don't have the manpower to do that. But it may be something if the commission would agree to, that I could explore getting them painted. Maybe even use water and sewer funds. I don't know.
the county has an as-needed contract there that you might be able to lop onto.
Yeah.
use that, so we work so.
Yeah, if water sewer funds, that kind of solves the problem.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning towards. I did talk about it with the mayor a little bit, and this gentleman had mentioned maybe we can have some
High school kids.
high school kids.
Oh,
And
God,
the
no.
problem with that is there's liability issues and there's supervision issues. So, anyways,
We have enough money
It
to
was very
take
nice.
care of it in some manner at some point.
He was very nice, but after I talked to him, I realized he was right. He said, if you look in other cities, including the township, they have really nice shiny red fire hydrants, and ours aren't at all. Ours are all,
I
scratched
guess
up.
I haven't
and
noticed.
I never noticed.
I haven't either.
And then I thought maybe that's good. You don't notice,
I'm trying to think if
you're
there's
gonna
any,
notice them now if they get painted.
Yeah, when they get painted bright red, you will notice them.
But it is a best practice, and it is important. We do have in our fire engines, we have a computer. It tells you exactly where the hydrant is, because then you know which way to pull the truck in. You can quickly hook up to it. So that's not necessarily an issue like it used to be years ago. But at the same time,
Maybe you could paint them green or something.
we have to paint them red because green means something else. But yeah. But anyways, if the commission thinks it's okay, I'll look into that with water and sewer funds. Okay. And that's all I have. Maybe
Do we
that's-
know any more on Chesterfield Bridge?
Yeah, so we completed the hydraulics study. We are working with our structural department on estimates, and Leah, I think, reached out to Dave to sit down and talk to Dave next week. We're continuing, as I've mentioned before, on this roller coaster of bidding. Last week, we had 4 projects bid under. The week before, every project bid over. Steel on one bridge went from $5 a pound to $26. It's wild, wild west. So the best thing to do is get out there and get a real price. But we're going to sit with Dave next week. Just kind of work through those options, make sure we got everything laid out. So that first study will be done and ready to present, and we'll probably talk about that in June.
And you believe that, assuming that the costs come in and all of that, the hydraulics, that this would last how long?
Oh, I think this will last. I mean, full, I think you've said, 20 years for the culvert repair, or 50 years for the full-blown brand-new culvert, I think is what we talked. I mean, you're getting a whole new bridge, but all that, I got a caveat with maintenance and checking it and make sure we don't have a tree go over it, but you know what I mean, and keeping.
So we would get 20 years out of this?
At least.
Okay.
Least.
Okay.
I mean, it's building a whole new concrete pipe inside the old pipe, and so that'll last. But we have to inspect it anyways, because it's in the program. You inspect it, you see a crack, we go fix it. You know what I mean? Because it's in a water environment, and there's a lot of things that happen, but it'll last. And I think we reported that the floodplain tube does not have to be some big monster thing. So we've got a nice little trench over the brand new road. It make that a little easier than what we were thinking. It might have to be something bigger trench. At that point, you just rip the road up and do the whole thing. I still think that repairing the culverts in place at the lower cost is the right thing to do. It's the right Eagle argument. It's the right road impact argument. I think it's just the right thing to do.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll give you both options with updated costs and all of that stuff. It's wild. It is wild. We spend most of our days talking about bidding because it's just up and down and left and right.
So that's all I have. But if the commission wouldn't mind, I just wanted to ask the chief about how the Woodward noise issue and all that's going, and your communications with the residents. And
I communicate with the residents every Friday or Thursday or Friday. I reach out, speak to Rita. We've had good communication all month. I spoke to her today. We've also attended some meetings with the county and other local law enforcement, and we are working towards coming up with hopefully some solutions in legal to go to the legislation with, to ask for some help. We met with the sheriff, who's we've talked about trying to formulate some collective groups to target it with 15 or 20 people. I had a meeting with the traffic unit at the sheriff department today, the traffic sergeant, and he's agreed to come out and help us at the intersections on Woodward to supply 6-8 guys additional 3 or 4 times throughout the summer. We're going to pick some dates and warm weather dates. They have to be during the week, unfortunately, but we'll try to get those Thursday, Fridays, because that's higher. This month, overall, has been pretty good. We've got a lot of rain to help us out, so the best thing to help us is rain and
It's supposed to
cold
rain this
temperatures,
weekend.
but that's not necessarily what we want in summer. We have to find a way to live with good weather and Woodward. The guys have been working hard. We had some drag racing arrests this weekend, so we are doing enforcement, but it continues to be problematic. So.
Just as a comment, someone I know lives in one of our neighboring communities had their car stolen, and it wasn't our community, from their driveway in a residential street, and the officer said we're spending so much time on trying to control Woodward that community was having a hard time policing some of their residential streets as much as they normally would. We've got to get this fixed so everything can balance the way. I mean, I think you guys are doing a good job trying to do everything. I mean,
we've experienced some of that too. If you put all your people on Woodward, it does take away from other things. You become a little more reactive when you're trying to be proactive in one area. That also happens when we're having car larcenies from office buildings, and we put all our cars working in the office building parking lots. That takes people away from that. And the stolen cars are a problem. They're a huge problem. We've had more stolen cars in the last couple of years than I remember in the last 20 years that I've worked here. The biggest thing we could do there is get people to quit leaving their key fobs in their car.
yeah, that's what this situation was apparently.
We just recently had one too, and they go there, they're doing LFAs or larcenies from the auto to steal things out of the car. They hit the push button. If it starts up, it is a crime.
It's just too easy
to drive away with it, and it usually is recovered after they use it for crimes, joyriding. It's usually damaged parts are missing out of it, but quite often it's recovered down south or.
Yeah.
I've heard that is the issue everywhere, yeah, because they don't have to even look for the key to put it in the ignition. Just the new technology makes it too easy.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Record-breaking
Anybody else have anything?
meeting.
It is a record-breaking meeting, I think.
Yeah, this is a new record, I believe.
Are we doing? Okay.
That's great.